everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and this is the best start I have ever had to a reading year. I'm not even kidding. I think the closest I came to this was in like January of 2019 or 2020, and I read like 8 or 10 books. And this is 14 things. Now, I'm kind of breaking my reading up a little bit this year, so I track on 2 different places now. I have Goodreads is just for the novels and books that I read, and then I'm using Storygraph to also track all of my manga and graphic novels. But it is quite funny because on Goodreads it's saying that I'm 2 books ahead of schedule, and I'm like, yay, I feel great. And then I go on to Storygraph, and despite having read 14 different things, it's still saying that I'm barely on track, and I'm like, oh my god. But we are here for January's wrap-up, and again, slightly differently. Normally I would go through these from my least rated up to my best, from like lowest to highest rated. But this year I thought, certainly for January, I am going to go with what I started the year with, and then to the book that I just finished about 15-20 minutes ago. And then from February onwards, I'll just go back to my usual format, probably of lowest to highest. Anyway, I read 14 things in total this month. In terms of pages, for anyone that is interested, when it comes to novels, it was 1,963, so just under 2,000 pages, which again, really happy with across 6 novels. And I've got my first 5 stars in here. I have a manga, a non-fiction and a fiction sort of novel, 5 stars. So I cut the trifecta. So let's get into it, shall we? The very first thing that I started and finished in the year, because I did start something before this one, but this was the first completed thing of the year, was Ex-Yakuza and Stray Kitten Volume 1 by Riddle Kamimura. This features a guy here who is an ex-Yakuza, ex-mob, and him and his old gang and their leader decided to quit the mob life, and they now have a pet cafe. And he finds this tiny kitten that's just been abandoned, and he decides to take it in, only the kitten is absolutely terrified of him because he is Yakuza. I kind of had problems with, how does the cat know that he's Yakuza? Why would a kitten even understand this? Like, I can understand him being scared of him, but when he's like, oh, he's Yakuza, he's dangerous, I'm like, he wouldn't know that. And I had a couple of minor issues, but the cat himself is so cute, and just the way he, is it Jin? Yeah, the way Jin is with the animals is just so beautiful. It kind of gave me Way of the House Husband vibes, where he still talks like he's a gangster, and he addresses the pets like they are his minions, and I did find that quite funny. There was a couple of issues, but it was a pretty solid, fun read for the start of the year. And I think I did this on the 1st or 2nd of January, and I gave it a 3.5 or 4. I did give it a 4 stars, but it is very low. It's only just a 4 star, but it did get 4 stars. The first novel that I started and finished, every year I have a thing now where I pick an author I've never read before and a book that I'm really looking forward to, and hope that that's going to be a really good start to the year. Up until now, this hasn't yielded very good results, and both, I think the 3 years in a row that I've done it, I've been kind of disappointed. But I broke that streak. I finally got a really good start to the year. This is Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert. This was gifted to me from a book group that I'm on Facebook, so thank you so much again for my gift if you ever watch this video. And I was like, it's nerdy, it's geeks, it's 2 guys who are kind of opposites attract. It's enemies to lovers, but we all know I don't like enemies to lovers in a contemporary setting. So I say it's rivals to lovers. And it is very much a case of opposites attract, and these 2 understanding more, going on this road trip to attend a convention. One of them is doing the road trip because he can't afford to fly. The other one is terrified of flying. And through circumstances, they end up having to travel alone together when originally they were meant to be 4 people. And along the way, they bond. They start to realise that the perception they have of each other is completely wrong. And a beautiful relationship forms between them. It had some nerdy stuff in here. It was brilliant. It had neurodivergent rep. It had anxiety. It talked about how people are treated when they come out to their families. And I did end up having a really good time with this one. This one got a 4.5 stars. It was almost good enough for a 5-star, but there were a couple of niggles that I can't talk about because it is spoilery. But there were a couple of niggles that came in towards the end of the book that kind of spoiled it a tiny bit for me, but not enough for me to knock it down too badly. So 4.5 stars and a fantastic start to my year. Then I picked up Spy Family Volume 1. I have previously read this. I've watched the anime. It's one of my favourites. I cannot wait to see where this series is going to go. But it's the first time that I've owned a physical copy of it. And thank you to my amazing partner, Ren, for basically buying me a butt ton of books before Christmas and my birthday, including this one. So I can now start reading the physical copies and try and catch up to where they are, because I haven't read it for a couple of years now because I wanted to have more volumes, and so now starts my journey of catching up. And this one we follow Twilight, who is a spy, and he basically has to try and get some intel on this other dude. Unfortunately, the guy is a recluse. The only time he comes out is to attend events at his son's school. So Twilight is tasked with creating a family and getting his fake child to go to the school so he can get an in. And that leads him to adopting Anya, who turns out is telepathic. And then he also marries Yor through circumstances, who it turns out is an assassin. So you have a spy, a telepath, an assassin, and none of them know that about each other. It's brilliant. I love it. It is so fun. This one got another one with 4.5 stars. It's a really solid start to the series, but it's not until later on that it really gets into its flow. So, and it can be a bit clunky where you've got to learn about new people and new places, but I still loved it and I gave it 4.5 stars. Next up we have an ebook, and this is actually the lowest that I rated anything this entire month, and that is A Monstrous Claim by R.D. Bryn, I want to say. R.K. Pierce, I got the R bit. I read it for a Monster Smut prompt for Adventure-a-thon. It was okay, and I had huge issues with the fact that this is a monster smut, and apart from one very, very brief scene involving a tail, and then one very, very, very brief scene where it's kind of like, yeah, this guy has a tentacle in place of a you-know-what, and that was it. I was like, cool, so you've gone there, you've included these interesting things, and then barely gone into it. But you can tell from the way the author is in the comment, in her acknowledgements, where she's like, look, I finally wrote Monster Peen. It's a subject that I think she was a bit uncomfortable writing, and so maybe she was just like, let's just play it safe for our first foray into it. But it was pretty decent, and I had no major issues. Like, the world building was actually really interesting. But I did give this one 3.5 stars because, like I said, for what I was expecting, it wasn't so great. And I also really did not like the main character, Devon. Was it Devon? I think it's Devon. Didn't like her. I preferred the male leads. So, as I said, that one got 3.5 stars. Following that, I picked up another one that was a birthday present. I read Our Not So Lonely Planet Travel Guide. This one was pretty good. I am still not completely sold on the artwork, but it follows these two guys who are dating, and they've agreed that when they are going to go on an around the world trip, and when they come back they will get married. One of them is this guy here. He is quite reluctant to be open and proud about his relationship. He's very much doesn't like to talk about it in public, doesn't really admit to anybody that that is his relationship. And we also are aware that he's got some health problems. We see a surgical scar, and there are hints that he had problems earlier in the year. And so that's obviously knocked his confidence, and he's not employed currently. And then we have his boyfriend, who is a photographer. He's pretty relaxed, pretty easygoing, but we start to get hints that maybe there is something a bit deeper beneath the surface, and that his mental health may not be as good as he likes to let people believe it is. But the one thing I will say that this did exceptionally well is selling travel, because it showed the bad, but it also showed the good. And the way you can tell the mangaka loves each of the countries that they're talking about. Even though the character design isn't my favourite, so if we look here, their design, not my favourite, but when we look at the food and the landscapes that it shows, it's so well done, and you can tell that there is a love for travel and culture in this book. I gave this one 4 stars, and I definitely plan on continuing. Then we had a surprising one. I'm not going to talk super much about it because it's going to be in part 2 of my wholesome manga video, but thanks to Meredith from Reading with Merb, I picked up High School Debut, and I wasn't expecting much out of this, but it was surprisingly good. A lot of early 2000s manga tended to be that the love interest, the male love interest, always used to sort of bully the female and was really mean and horrible. And there was an element there of him being a little bit mean, but it was more just blunt honesty rather than being mean just to bully her. And he stood up for her, and it's very obvious that even though he's like, you can't fall for me, it's very obvious that he's going to fall for her first, which is one of my all-time favourite things. And I really ended up loving their dynamic, and I loved the way that they built a friendship pretty quickly, despite his initial reluctance to help her. I like how she kind of starts the book being like, I want to attract boys, and when he's like, well, why do you want to attract boys? And have you ever actually been attracted to a boy? And she's like, oh, no. And then by the end of the volume, she starts to think that maybe she is starting to understand because she starts to fall for one of his friends. And is like, oh, I'm getting that heart pounding that people tell me about. And it's like, oh, it's going to be so cute. And I think this is going to definitely be wholesome. Speaking of wholesome, we have it's definitely going to be a top one in that vlog. We have I Think Our Son Is Gay, Volume 1 by Okura, and this was my first 5-star manga for the year because this thing, in fact, I think my 3 5-stars came back to back with each other because I had I Think Our Son Is Gay, where the mum suspects that her son is gay. He keeps accidentally saying things like, when I get a boyfriend, and is then like, oh no, I didn't mean that. And then he's got a crush on someone at school, and his little brother is aware, and his brother kind of tries to protect him and support him in his own way. The only one that doesn't know is his dad, and his dad does make a couple of comments through the book, like, oh, you wouldn't want to be gay, would you, son? That kind of attitude. And the mum's very, very gently trying to sort of brace the dad for when it happens that her son is eventually going to come out. But just the little ways that she supports him, the ways that his brother encourages him himself is just so sweet. And yeah, the art is a little bit simplistic, but I think it works really well in its simplicity. It doesn't try to overcomplicate things, and the heart of this is in the storytelling and the actual interactions, and I cannot wait to continue that series. Another one that kind of hit me, but in a very raw spot rather than like an emotional like aw kind of spot, but was my first 5-star non-fiction. It is Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. I was invited onto the tandem read along for it. Fern is a comedian from Scotland. She was on Taskmaster, and I really liked her on Taskmaster, and when I was watching it I was like, I think she's got ADHD or something. I was just picking up on something. And then I found out she was autistic and had this book, so I joined the read along for it. And honestly, this just reaffirmed that I am autistic, made me realise that some of the behaviours I display that I've been shamed for and embarrassed by my entire life are actually normal symptoms of autism, especially in undiagnosed women. And also gave just a really raw and unabashed look. She talked about everything from the sort of more superpowers of autism down to destroying your entire kitchen because you had your nails done at salon and they cut them too deep and it just sent you into overdrive. She did not hold back. She talked about promiscuity. She talked about everything, and drugs and all sorts. And I resonated with a lot of what she said. Obviously not all of her experiences are the same as what I've had, but so many of the things I did. And I also have learned a few words and a few things about my own behaviours that I didn't even know. So it's just kind of helped me to sort of reaffirm that yes, I am autistic, and I now have names for some of the behaviours that up until now I've not even been able to describe, let alone give a name to. This did give me 5 stars, not only because of the autism rep, but also because of just how brutally honest it was, and she didn't shy away, and she wasn't ashamed to be who she is. Then the 5-star fiction, this one was again a massive surprise because it features time travel, which I don't tend to enjoy. It's more magical realism, which I don't tend to enjoy, although this is now 2 books in a row that I've read that are magical realism that I've given 5 stars, so I'm now starting to wonder if maybe I do enjoy it. And it's also translated fiction, which again, I don't tend to read. You probably figured it out by now, but it is. That was the next bit to remind myself. And that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I started off with this, not really getting on with it. I was a bit not sure. By the end, I was in tears. I had to put the book down multiple times because it was getting a bit too emotional. And I knew where the story was going. And I was sort of almost at that point, you know, when you know where something's going and you beg for it not to, even though you know you can't stop it. Yeah, that's what this one was doing. I was like, please don't do it, please don't go, please don't go. And it did. And yeah, it was very emotional. I do want to continue the series. I'm not sure. I'm worried that it might get a bit repetitive. But certainly the way this one was written, by the end, it had me absolutely hooked and in emotional wreck. And I now want to get some damages paid for the emotional turmoil that I went through reading this book. Then we had the first arc that I completed of the year, and that is Not in the Plan by Dana Hawkins. I'm not really going to say anything about this because I just posted a full review, because today is the day that I'm recording this, which is 31st January, is its published day. So I've done a full review and posted it, so please go check that out. But essentially it's sapphic, it's queer, it's set in a coffee shop, it's very cute, it's very wholesome. I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. So check out that review and give it a try. Then we had another one that was emotionally soul destroying and made me cry, and that is Orange by Ichigo Takano. This is volume 1 of 2, and it's about a group of friends. One of them gets a letter from her future self basically saying to protect Kakeru at all costs and giving her a list of things that she needs to do in order to prevent the death of one of the friends in the group. And it just follows her journey of trying to do those things while also summoning her own courage and her own bravery. And it also has like the bond of friendship between the group. We get the view from obviously their teenage selves as it's happening, and then we get them as adults where they're reflecting on those things. And it was just very emotional. And again, it's one that dealt with things like self-harm, suicide, things like that, but it also had sort of anxiety in there, and I found it very potent, especially as I've said in my vlog when I was reading for this. I have said that I was in that position as a teenager where I went to a very dark place. It was one that just hit me in a particularly vulnerable spot, but not in a bad way. It kind of made me now as an adult that I didn't do it, grateful that I didn't do it, and for the people that are around me now. So I'm really looking forward to getting to volume 2 to find out how this is going to resolve. But obviously, if you are affected by those kind of things, or if you yourself are in that kind of place, maybe hold off on reading it until you're in a better place, or you feel that you are more equipped to read it, because it is not one that shies away from the topic in any way, shape or form. So please take care of your mental health first. Then we had Ex-Yakuza and Stray Kitten Volume 2. But this is just following on the story of Jin and Sabu. Sabu is now settling in to the cafe and is learning the do's and don'ts of being in the cafe, and is learning about the different animals that are there. He's still terrified of Jin, but by the end we start to see that maybe he's softening up a little bit. And I'm kind of low-key hoping that Jin decides to keep him, but I will also be very happy to see him get adopted. But it was just super cute, and I actually preferred this to the first one. So where the first one got 4 stars, this one got 4.5. Then we had another one that was kind of still fitting in with the theme of autism and me getting that constant reassurance that I'm not crazy and that I am onto something. And I read Sensory Life on the Spectrum, which is a comics anthology that I picked up while I was in Edinburgh. And I can see why Ren loved this one so much. It has 40 different contributors and they are all writing their experiences of what it's like to have autism. Some of the stuff on here was a bit more factual, some was more anecdotal, but it was all really, really good. Again, it helped me put things into words and helped me realise that there are certain things that are actually common with autism that I didn't realise. There was even one point I was like, holy crap, I did not know that that was a thing that I did until right this second. So again, very affirming. There were a couple of parts where I was like, I feel like this could have been expanded on more and I wish that there'd been a bit more space given to the creator. But for the most part, I enjoyed reading every single thing in here. And you can see by the sheer amount of tabs, I have now got a lot of creators that I now need to go follow and look up on various social medias. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I didn't give it the full 5 stars because, like I said, some of the stories were very short and there were one or two in here where I genuinely I was confused and I was like, I don't understand what is being said here, and I felt like it just needed a little bit more, like an extra page or a couple more panels just to flesh it out a little bit. And I felt sometimes the pace of it, we'd have one comic that was really sort of looking at the positives, and then the next one would be a really depressing one, and I did get a little bit of emotional whiplash at times. But overall, it was fantastic and a must read for anyone who either suspects they are, or knows someone with autism. And then we have the one that I finished literally, now about 40 minutes ago, now that we're about half an hour in. And I think I've settled on what my review rating is going to be, but Editing Kirsty, will put up here if I've changed this. But I think I've settled on 3.5 stars, and that is This Vicious Grace by Emily Teed. This started off as a 4.5 to 5 star. Just putting it out there. The world building I loved, the banter and the relationships between all of the characters I loved the relationships the emotions, and her way of writing is so good, especially the dialogue between characters. I was laughing and I just was invested. You can tell I've got a lot of tabs in here. There were so many great moments. Unfortunately, it fell to once the romance began, nothing else really sort of mattered, and it just there was a whole chunk of this book for about 60 pages where it was just kind of them swooning over each other and how much they like the look of each other and how much she wanted him in her bed. Oh my god, it was frustrating to have that complete 180 where it's like, doomsday is coming and you're thinking about how great this guy's chest is. And I also found it was a lot more raunchy. This is YA, but honestly, I would not feel comfortable stocking this in a high school library. For the older kids, like sixth formers, 16 to 18 year olds, yeah, probably. But 13, 14 year old, it was borderline too much. They were making so many innuendos as well, which I appreciate a good innuendo. Don't get me wrong. I'm one of the first people to drop them when I hear them. And when I make one, I'm like, haha, innuendo. But this one, it just went too far, and it I don't know, something changed and I didn't like it. And by the end, I decided that yes, I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to treat this as a standalone. I'm no longer, and I also had a quick look on Goodreads, and I've seen some very not great reviews regarding the romance and the content, and how the second book seems to forget what happened in the first book and goes in a completely different direction. And so I was it has made me go, I'm not really bothered if I complete the series. So I am going to call this one a series DNF, but I did enjoy this one. And like I said, the first half and the last sort of 30, 40 pages were 5 star. So if you are someone who does enjoy like a lot of romance and isn't put off by smutty, lustful things and doesn't care if the plot moves from one thing to romance, then you will love it. But when I'm reading a fantasy, I want to read the fantasy. I don't want it to be overtaken. I don't mind if there is a romance, but I don't want the plot to be completely overtaken by the romance. And I think that's why I really love Dark Shades of Magic, even though I know a lot of people don't, is because it did do that. Even though there was a romantic element in there, the plot focused on what was happening rather than, oh look, these two now want to kiss and all they're thinking about is how they want to bone each other. So that was my biggest fault with this. But like I said, I really wanted to give it a 4 or a 4.5, but there was a part of it where I was just rolling my eyes and starting to skim read and skip pages, and that is never a good sign. So that was it. That is my January reading, and I've read so much that it's taken me a stupidly long time to get through it all, but I'm so happy. I tried it last year where I did a book bracket at the end of the year, and that's when I decided what each book of the month was. But I think if I had to choose my favourite book for this month, it would be Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. It just really hit me. I wasn't expecting what I got out of it. I wasn't expecting the emotional punch. I wasn't expecting it to be so reassuring to me. And I also didn't expect to learn so much from it. And I now have a whole bunch of resources to follow up and look up. So that would be book of the month. But obviously I might change my mind between now and December, because I like to also look at the long-term impacts of books. Let me know in the comments, how did you get on with your first reads of 2024 and what was your favourite or favourites for the month? In the meantime, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more content from me. I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe, and until next time.